Welcome to the groundbreaking news program that delves into the heart of Mormonism, your weekly window into the unique intersection of news, history, and culture that resonates with the tapestry of Mormonism. So whether you're tuning in from the heart of Utah or joining us from around the world, your favorite news program starts now, where news meets insight and the stories of our faith unfold.
And take two. Good evening, everybody. Welcome once again to another episode of the Mormon Newscast. Today's date is November 25th, 2024. The reason I say take two is because we got about 2 minutes into the show before we realized we weren't live. And it was really good stuff. It was the best stuff that you're ever going to hear all night, except you're not going to hear it because we weren't streaming at the time. I am Radio Free Mormon. I'm joined by my esteemed co-host, Bill Reel, and I am not joined by my esteemed co-host, Rebecca Biblioteca, tonight. She's not with us. She had other things to do, more important things, obviously.
Yes. So there's that. Like I said, in the first run, she'll get you back for sure. But I'm excited about tonight's show. There's quite a bit going on. And we might even have a little bit of an update on the Fairview Temple as well.
Yes, late breaking news on that. However, the stories for tonight are the Lavina Fielding Anderson rebaptized posthumously. Number 2, Mormonism at the world's largest book fair. The church educational system is thriving, ? And finally, LDS scholar says those who love the faith are better sources of truth. First off, Lavina Fielding Anderson rebaptized posthumously. There's a picture of Levina. And here is the timeline. What I did for this was I went back. I not only looked at the Tribune article that came out last week on November, I can't remember when it came out, but it was relating to November 12th. I went back and I also looked up prior articles. I looked up the article in the Tribune about when it was that Lavina Fielding Anderson was denied her rebaptism in 2019. There was another article when she passed away in 2023, and another article, of course, last week about the First Presidency having finally allowed her to be rebaptized posthumously, but without telling her son, who had requested it. So, 1992, the dialogue article was published, the one that she got excommunicated over. That was another thing I did, was I went back and I reread the dialogue article, and we'll mention that as well. It's 58 pages long. It's quite extensive, and after reading it, I can see why it was that church authorities were mad as hell at Lavina Fielding Anderson and wanted blood. Because what she was doing was she was documenting thoroughly and exposing the fact, among other things, that church general authorities were violating their own policies about not getting involved in local disciplinary actions over and over and over again. And she brought the receipts. And I don't think they liked having their pants pulled down publicly and having their collective pee-pee whacked.
You can't stage manage a grizzly bear.
Yes. No, you can't. You can't. But you can deny them rebaptism, I guess. So what happens is she's excommunicated September of 1993, along with 5 others. She's one of the September 6, 2019. As I said, the request for rebaptism was denied by the First Presidency. October 29th of 2023, she passes away. And then finally, they have to wait a year. That's still the policy before asking for rebaptism. You have to wait a year. And her son did that, and he requested it. And the church went ahead and did her work at his request without notifying him until 8 days after it had already been completed by strangers, making it so that he could not participate. Here's a picture of Lavina Fielding Anderson in her earlier days. And here is the article, the 1992 article, by Lavina Fielding Anderson that was published in Dialogue. It's titled, "The LDS Intellectual Community and Church Leadership, a Contemporary Chronology." Now, once again, I said it's 58 pages. I'm not going to go through all of this. There is one story that I want to read to you. And the reason I want to read to you this story is because it happened to Levina personally. She's not recounting the story of somebody else. This is a story that happened to her when she was working for the Ensign magazine. And in fact, it happened at the very end of the time that she was working with the Ensign magazine, and has to do with why it was that she got fired from Ensign magazine or forced to resign. Here's the story. It's 1981. It's June 25th. My goodness, I'm still on my mission in Japan at the time. I'm skipping down to first paragraph without the parentheses. At about 9:30 a.m., the managing editor of the Ensign, J.M. Todd, ushers me upstairs to the office of Verl Scott, where I am informed I am being summarily terminated for distributing confidential material to unauthorized personnel. Background: Elder Hartman Rector had delivered a conference talk in April containing a list of sins of the last days. You remember this conference talk, don't you, Bill?
Actually, I don't know this one
This
because
is the one where he talks about homosexuality being a choice.
yeah, so I know the quote there, but I'm not familiar with the talk. I think this came before I joined the church.
Yeah, well, he gave the talk. There was some pushback. They changed the printed version of it for publication. And that's whereby this whole story hangs, that fact. So Elder Hartman Rector gave a talk in General Conference, April 1981, about abortion, homosexuality, birth control, and sterilization, among other things, signs and sins of the last days, that was toned down for publication. Peggy Fletcher, publisher of Sunstone, those were the days, huh? Peggy Fletcher, publisher of Sunstone, had said the magazine would run parallel before and after versions transcribed from the videotape. So in other words, the before and after versions of Elder Hartman Rector's talk. I offered to supply her with a copy of the old text, i.e. the original talks that he actually went off of in conference, then sitting in its pigeonhole, waiting to be thrown away, since the conference ensign had been published in May. I photocopied the lowest or earliest version, the one he used, and put it in the inner office mail, addressed to a Sunstone volunteer who was a church employee in another department. So it's going to another department, to another church employee who is also a Sunstone volunteer. Jay later told me, Jay Todd, that he saw the envelope in the outgoing mail and felt inspired to open it. Who knew that the Mormon God was Gladys Kravitz? Well, there you have it. I want to go back to something here. He felt inspired to open it. I want to go back to this previous slide. I'm only going to read this one. Footnote 19. Gary Bergera wrote to Elder Rector inquiring about the difference between the published version of his talk and the version reported in the Deseret News, Church News, and Salt Lake Tribune. Elder Rector replied in a handwritten note, quote, "Sometimes it is not expedient to make people angry by telling them in too plain terms what their problems are. I presume a combination of things made the First Presidency decide to eliminate certain portions of my remarks, even though they had received and cleared the talk before it was given." So the First Presidency receives and clears Elder Hartman Rector's talk before it's given. He gives the talk, there's pushback, and now it's got to be sliced and diced. That's what principles are like among the leadership in the LDS Church. Ah, there she is. Abna! Abna! He goes on. It is okay. They know best. Passive aggression at its finest. However, what was said is still true. So he's not backing off at all on what he said as being true. He's saying the reason they took it out was because it was too plain in its statement of the truth. All right. So going on with the article. Excuse me. Are you moving these, Bill? Or okay. So I got to take responsibility for that all by myself. Continuing with the article, while I understood that conference talks were confidential before they are delivered, I asked for clarification about how a conference talk could be confidential after it is delivered. Verl Scott assured me that a manuscript of what the ensign actually printed would still be considered confidential. That doesn't make any sense. Jay and a representative from the personnel department escorted me to my office, supervised the packing of my personal effects, and took me to my car. The whole process was over before noon. Jay also informed me that the earliest version of the Rector talk, which I had not read, actually contained additional material that did not appear in the delivered version. Okay, I guess we'll just have to take his word for it. I expected to feel traumatized by being fired. To my surprise, I didn't. I felt cheerful. I received dozens of calls from friends who were angry, sympathetic, grieved, and hurt. I appreciated their concern, but we usually ended up laughing together. Judy Dushku offered to organize a legal aid fund so I could sue. I told her I didn't want my job back. Mary Beth Rain said, "You'll probably crash in a couple of days. Call me day or night if you need to talk." I never did. Linda Silito sent me a poem that instead captured my feelings precisely. Hey, Bill, could you read us this poem?
You're going to have to help me where I'm at. I was trying to find a picture of Elder Dushku. If you remember, we covered him before, and I wanted to see if there was a connection between the two. So where am I?
It's just those 4 lines at the top. I apologize for interrupting your researches.
Okay, got it. One by one, they throw us from the tower, and we spread our wings and fly.
I think I've heard that before. I might have been from this article when I read it the first time. It's a wonderful sentiment. I have never experienced a moment of regret, she writes, for the almost 8 years I spent at the Ensign, nor one moment of regret that I am not still there. But I interpret those feelings purely and wholly as a blessing bestowed upon me. As a result, although I sometimes disagreed with Jay's management style and felt considerable frustration periodically at the correlation review system, I have only the best of memories about my work there. The next day I went in, shook hands with Jay, assured him that I held no hard feelings, and asked him to communicate my farewells and best wishes to the staff. I would have been full of hard feelings. And I was squeezed really hard, like as hard as I could when I shook his hand. Jay probably had reasons for feeling that my value as an employee was marginal. Although Christian, that's her son, her one son, her only child, although Christian was born 3 months earlier, and of course he's the one who will request the work be done for her posthumously. Although Christian was born 3 months earlier, I had no plans to stop working. Jay strongly disapproved of working mothers. I not only attended, but persistently participated in academic and scholarly conferences and argued, I'm sure at wearisome length, for bolder editorial treatments of sensitive issues. In January 1980, Elder Boyd K. Packer had warned church employees that keeping confidences is a condition of our service. Adding an incident traced to you or to someone you are responsible to supervise could be of most serious concern. So what he's saying is whistleblowers, you will be retaliated against. Make no mistake about that. Jay would certainly have felt that Jay would certainly have felt that responsibility heavily. Furthermore, I offended Elder M. Russell Ballard, the magazine's managing director. Can you imagine he was the managing director of a magazine, Elder Ballard? And Amelia Smith McConkey, wife of Bruce R. McConkey, by giving a paper at a BYU Women's History Archives conference, which suggested that their grandfather, Joseph F. Smith, characterized Mary Fielding Smith's wagon master with inaccurate harshness. Yeah, that's something to get offended about. Jay had accompanied me to the interview with Elder Ballard and was almost certainly embarrassed by the situation. Okay, so that's all I'm going to read from that article. I recommend it to you to read. You can find it easily on the internet. The title is there. You know it's in dialogue, and you know who wrote it. Like I say, it's rather lengthy, and it is packed with information. It is heavy with facts. It's dense. And so I just had to give myself permission to take my time to read through it slowly and carefully. And yeah, like I said, I can see why the leadership of the church was really, really mad at her, because she was exposing all of their nefarious doings. Now going to the first of the 3 news articles. This is September 5th, 2019, Peggy Fletcher Stack, Salt Lake Tribune. So here's Peggy Fletcher, who was the editor of the Sunstone back then. Wow. Writer excommunicated during September 6th purge loses her bid to rejoin the LDS church. I wonder how Peggy felt writing this, given her history with Levina. Lavina Fielding Anderson, one of the famed September 6th writers and scholars disciplined by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in 1993, got a big no last week to her request for rebaptism from the men who matter most, the faith's governing First Presidency. I'm getting a sense of how Peggy feels about this, just from that paragraph. I was not surprised or angry about the outcome, Anderson said, that's Lavina Fielding Anderson, said Wednesday, and she has no plans to try to open that door again. Here's what she says. I have kept my covenants, remained close to the church, and have felt that what I have done is acceptable by the Lord. If there is unfinished business, it's the First Presidency's, not mine." And they refer to Levina as Salt Lake City editor and writer. Here's another picture of her. I think this was from her Exponent 2 days. I believe that's where these particular pictures come from. In the quarter century since her ouster, Anderson consistently has attended weekly services at her Latter-day Saint congregation. Once again, this is 2019. This is being written. The Whittier Ward. She has sat quietly in the same pew as the emblems of the sacrament or communion have passed by her more than 1,200 times without being able to partake. She has participated as much as she was able, playing the piano and singing in the choir, and watched as 7 lay bishops have come and gone. On March 23rd, 2018, Anderson's husband, Paul, died of heart failure. It was his death and funeral that prompted the couple's current bishop to bring up the possibility of her rejoining the church. And there's another picture, which I think is from Exponent 2. A year later, David J. McLean, president of the Salt Lake Liberty Stake, reconvened a high council, a body that had excommunicated her 25 years and 6 months earlier for apostasy. I'm not sure why that's cutting off at the end. It's probably my fault there on the right side of the slide. In many respects, Anderson's affirmations mirror those of other members. Can we take ourselves, let's see if we can take ourselves off this screen, Bill, if that's okay. If
I can fix it if we wait for just a second.
I was doing okay up until that point. Now I have no idea what that.
No worries. Give me just a moment here, and I'll just go in there really quick and see if I can't fix that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Let's see here. Let's see if we know the slide number.
18.
Slide number 18.
So this article goes on about the affirmations that she made that mirror other members of the church. And she mirrored other members of the church in a lot of her affirmations, but she didn't just roll over and play dead in front of this special reconvened high council to consider her being rebaptized. She also told the leaders about her concerns about church exclusion, barring worthy LGBTQ couples who are legally married from full participation, blocking worthy and righteous women from the male-only priesthood, and keeping Mother in Heaven from her place in our understanding. In spite of her being completely candid with them, the High Council also heard from Anderson's son, Christian, who offered personal assessment. They're going to end up referring her and recommending to the First Presidency that she be rebaptized. And this is what her son, Christian, said at that hearing. Her sincere belief in Jesus and determination to follow him, no matter the adversity faced within or without the church, should be commended. And this good and faithful servant should be rewarded, he wrote. She embodies more than anyone else I know the ideal of a broken heart and contrite spirit, which has influenced me so strongly that I, the last time I checked, was one of only 2 of the 21 children of the September 6th who is still an active member. And apparently he still is today. Once again, it's being written in 2019. The regional council, that's the stake, forwarded her request to church headquarters with the recommendation that she be approved for rebaptism. She writes this: a beaming Bishop Madrigal said I should expect very soon to get a telephone call scheduling an interview with the general authority. No telephone call came. I'm presuming this is from her personal journal. On August 27th, McLean delivered the First Presidency denial. The stake president, who oversees a number of congregations, remained optimistic, she said, zeroing in on the words "at this time." But the writer replied, "There's hope, and then there's experience." In other words, that's what Lavina Fielding Anderson said. There's hope, and then there's experience. Besides, she said, it was a form letter. After 25 years of faithfully attending the church and doing everything she could within the bounds of her proscriptions as an excommunicant, after 25 years, they sent her a form letter when she requested to be rebaptized. That's what President Nelson, President Oaks, and President Eyring did. That's on your hands, guys. Okay, so having said that much, by the way, I have heard from other people, and I don't know that I have their permission to use their name, but there are other people, women in the church, who have stories to tell that are juxtaposed against this story, such as what happens when men get excommunicated, not for writing a piece that is true, that has correct information in it 25 years ago. No, they just step out and start having an affair on their wife, and then their wife dies of cancer, and they're not there for their wife, and then they go back, and within 2 years, they get rebaptized, blessings restored, and then they get sailed to the new girlfriend. You know what I mean? It's a very different ball game out there when it comes to how women and men are treated in this church. And the fact that it was 3 men making this decision to send a form letter to the woman, Lavina Fielding Anderson, who did not commit adultery. She didn't kill anybody. She wrote an article that may account for some of the reason that is. Do you have anything you want to say at this point, Bill, or you want me to just continue?
You had mentioned it on the Mormonism After Dark show we did this past Friday. That was the other screen there was the one we had fixed, but you had already read through it, so no worries there. They should have celebrated this. I mean, this was a person who, by asking for rebaptism, is sort of, to the church, sort of acknowledging sorry and repentance and willing to sort of acknowledge that they played a part in this and wanting to rejoin the church. And it would have been a great moment for the church to celebrate and look like it was offering forgiveness. And what it did instead is it chose to get one last punch in the face in and sort of extend some embarrassment to the family by not telling them until after it was over, and of course waiting until she had passed anyway.
It shows how small and mean they are. They have nothing of the Spirit of Christ about them. And as I've said elsewhere, and I'll say it again, if I knew nothing about the church, and I know a ton about the church, if I knew nothing about the church except for this, that would be enough for me to know beyond any reasonable doubt that the leaders of this church have nothing to do with Jesus, and he does not know them, nor does he even recognize them.
Right.
Okay, so let's go ahead. This one. Okay, good. Now we go to the next article, which was in 2023, October 30th is the date of the article. She passed away the day before. Lavina Fielding Anderson did. It's titled September 6th, writer-editor who was denied re-entry into the LDS church dies. Now, there was a lot of duplicative stuff between the articles, as you might imagine. I got rid of that, or most of it at least. Lavina Fielding Anderson died early Sunday, October 29th, 2023, of respiratory failure secondary to pulmonary hypertension. Her son, Christian Anderson, said she was 79. A memorial service for Lavina Fielding Anderson will be held at 10 a.m. on Friday, November 10th at the McKinley Latter-day Saint Ward, and they have the address in Salt Lake City. The lively writer and editor was among the September 6 scholars and activists disciplined by the Utah-based Faith for apostasy. 5, including Anderson, were excommunicated. She is the second of that group to die after historian D. Michael Quinn, who died in 2021 at age 77. And here is from her memorial, I believe. In loving memory of. After leaving the church magazine, The Ensign, we just read that story, didn't we? After leaving the church magazine, Peggy. Anderson launched her own editing business and quickly became the go-to editor for Mormon publications. You know I said Peggy like that, don't you, Bill?
Yeah, because she didn't leave the church magazine. She was fired, and Peggy is directly involved in the story. And hence, if anybody has an invested right and responsibility and an awareness to be able to get the story right, it's Peggy Fletcher Stack.
Yeah, Peggy, you fell down on that one. In subsequent years, she goes on, the prodigious editor amassed an impressive array of clients and publications. I mean, I had no idea that Lavina Fielding Anderson did all of this stuff. She was amazing. She was on the editorial advisory committee of Signature Books, co-editor of the case reports of the Mormon Alliance and the Association for Mormon Letters Annual, and a copy editor for the Journal of Mormon History, Dialogue, a Journal of Mormon Thought, and the Review of Higher Education. She was the co-editor of Lucy's book, a critical edition of Lucy Mack Smith's family memoir, which explored the writings of the mother of church founder, Joseph Smith. Here's a picture of the September 6th. Without looking at the bottom, can you name them all, Bill?
Well, you've got Levina, you've got D. Michael Quinn there. The guy in the top right, I don't know that person. You got Maxine Hanks in the bottom left.
Bottom right.
You've got Maxine Hanks in bottom left. And then
Okay.
you've got, I think, is that Paul Toscano there in the middle bottom?
It is, that handsome devil.
And I don't know who that is on the right bottom either, but I'm going to guess that, I don't know, is Abraham Gileadi included in this? And if so, that
Yes.
would be the guy in the top right.
Yes.
And then I don't know the person in the bottom
By
right.
the process of elimination, you've got it right.
Yeah.
And I had gotten some of these names wrong, actually. It's been so long, But yes, so the other individual whose name I did not know off the top of my head was Lynn Whitesides.
Do you know what she did? I'm not even familiar with her. I'm familiar with the other five.
I'm sorry, I don't.
Folks,
I don't.
maybe in the comments, if you can let us know what she did to get herself into the September 6th, I'd love to know the history behind that.
Yeah, she's like the fifth Beatle.
Okay.
Or the 6th, September 6th. Okay. Husband Paul Anderson died March 23rd, 2018, after going with Levina to Provo, where she was awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award by the Association of Mormon Letters. Boy, that put a damper on that, I bet. Former Salt Lake Tribune columnist Robert Kirby, this is an interesting story, also got an award that night, but had been taking pain pills for a knee injury. Oh, right. The old knee injury. Yeah, Robert. That's why I was taking the pain pills. Levina, I'm just joking. Levina insisted her son drive the columnist home while she and her husband followed. Paul, who already wasn't feeling well at the time, died later that evening of a heart attack, Kirby wrote in a later column. Levina had spent some of the last hours with her husband, who's going to die that night, right? Making sure an incorrigible lout, i.e. himself, Robert Kirby, got home safely. He then wrote, excommunicated. Kirby asked, give me a break. That's the kind of person I fully expect will make it to heaven. Okay, so Robert Kirby, what do you make of 3 apostles of Jesus Christ at the top of the food chain who won't forgive her when she asks? Yeah. I don't know that he answered that question. And there's a picture of Robert Kirby. Go ahead.
Just a really quick little story, side tangent. I interviewed Robert Kirby several years ago, and the famous line I remember from the interview, he served in the primary, and he got lots of flack from other people, like, why would you want to be in there? He spent lots of years in the primary, and he was asked, why would you want to be in there? And he goes, I'd rather be in there smelling shit than out there listening to it. So, amen, Robert Kirby.
Very good. All right. So now we come to the third and final article from November 21st of last week, 2024. Peggy Fletcher Stack again. Writer excommunicated during LDS Church's September 6th purge is rebaptized with a twist. 5 years ago, top Latter-day Saint leaders refused to readmit excommunicated member Lavina Fielding Anderson to the fold. She finally got her wish. The faith's governing First Presidency now has granted Anderson, one of the famed September 6th, a rebaptism and restoration of her temple blessings and membership in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, a year after she died. There's another picture of Levina. As the first anniversary of Anderson's October 29th, 2023 death at age 79 approached, her son Christian Anderson wished to see her be rebaptized by a living participant. I naturally wanted, this is a quote from Christian, her son, I naturally wanted to be involved in, or at least aware of, my own mother's restored blessings, he says. So on October 29th, on the anniversary, he'd waited a year, exactly, right? I logged into familysearch.org, the church's genealogical arm, to try to register to perform baptisms for the dead. There was a lock on the record, and I was told to contact their help desk. I filled out a brief form that included my family search ID and hers, and a bit of contact information. Christian also added a brief note. I would like to fulfill her wish to be rebaptized in a holy temple. I would like to emphasize that though she was excommunicated in 1993, she continued to attend her ward faithfully for nearly 30 years until prevented by the COVID-19 pandemic and subsequent declining health. Instead, the First Presidency authorized others to do the rituals known as ordinances without inviting him to be included in any way, informing it was happening, and without inviting him to be included in any way, informing it was happening until 8 days after it was a fait accompli. Can you pronounce that sentence better than I can, Bill?
Without inviting him to be included in any way, informing it was happening until 8 days after it was, and then you'll have to fait accompli.
I think that could use a red pen, a red pencil. Okay, but that is copied and pasted from the article, so that's how Peggy wrote it, or at least how it was published. Now, I got to tell you, Bill, in all honesty, I understand that people are upset about Christian not being able to be included. I'm not sure that he was really clear that he wanted to be. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a strange thing. Restoration of blessings. Do they just throw that in with the rest of the youth baptismal list when they hand out the blue sheets and the pink sheets, and when the people go through for ordinances, or is there something that sort of separates that from the others, or is it? I don't know. And then the other thing too is I just don't trust this religion. I don't trust this faith. And so one thought I always have is, if these guys have already shown the propensity to do something like this, how do we even know? Like, how do we know that they didn't just mark it down that she had the ordinance done? Are the names of who did it recorded that you can visibly see that, or do you just have to accept the church's word? Because there are lots of potential things in an institution that's made a living out of deception.
Well, look, I don't know exactly, but here's my suspicion, okay? What I think is that we have to collect all of these ordinances over many, many years and through a great deal of sacrifice on our parts. They're kind of like, what are those in Boy Scouts? They're not merit badges, but the actual ranks, the rank badges that you get, right? And that takes quite a while. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of effort. Then when it comes to being kicked out, all those can just be taken away at once by a stake president, interestingly enough. I think what happens is that the First Presidency basically does one of these, signs a piece of paper, and it restores them. But I've never seen the paper, nor have I seen exactly what it is they do. I think that what they do is just as complicated as what the stake president does to remove them.
Yes, the temple blessings are restored through, at least, again, my understanding when having served as a bishop, is that when someone went to get their temple blessings restored, the stake president would lay hands on their head and restore them through a sort of a completely different way of doing it, right? You don't actually go back through the temple, but the baptism itself has to be reperformed. And so her name would have gone to the temple in some way or fashion for her to be baptized. And I'm just curious if it gets thrown in as one of the sections on the pink piece of paper, the blue, you know what I mean? So
my guess is the temple president or presidency has been delegated authority to do that, and they probably took care of it. That's my best guess. If you have any information on it, please feel free to put it in the comments or the live chat, folks. But that's my best guess. I don't know. I don't think they have to go through every single one of the ordinances again.
No, baptism they do for sure. The endowment is just the stake president laying hands on the person if they're alive and getting their blessings restored. And then the other ordinances in between, I don't know. And
the sealing restored. Yeah, everything's restored.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So take their word for it. They know what they're talking about. I think it may be just as effective if they didn't do anything as if they did.
Yeah.
And I also want you to know, I'm not trying to be unsympathetic to Christian's plight, because I think it was, I'm sure it was a blow. I think he took it well. But looking at this as an attorney, and I apologize, that's how I look at everything, I'm expecting that this is the most direct way that he made his wishes known, the part that was quoted, right? And I'll go back to the last part too, okay? He says, I naturally wanted to be involved in, or at least aware of, my own mother's restored blessings. Yes. My question is if he made that clear. So he registered. I filled out a brief form that included my family search ID and hers and a bit of contact information. No requests there. And this is what he says in his brief note. I would like to fulfill her wish to be rebaptized in a holy temple. Now, if you take that straight face value, literally give every bit of that to him, then he's saying, I want to be the one who rebaptizes her in a holy temple. But I think he could have made that more clear. Then he says, I would like to emphasize that though she was excommunicated in 1993, then he's saying how faithful she was. The only thing that even addresses his participation is, I would like to fulfill her wish to be rebaptized in a holy temple. And her wish to be rebaptized in a holy temple, that was performed, right? So, like I say, I'm really, really steamed about the first presidency, Nelson, Oaks, and Eyring denying her request for rebaptism in 2019. This one looks more like a simple miscommunication or between parties. So here comes the letter back to Christian. We are pleased to inform you, a temple department director wrote to Christian, that the following ordinances were completed under the direction of the first presidency. So there's the first presidency there, right? In the Jordan River, Utah Temple, or at least their direction and presumably their authority, on behalf of Sister Lavina Anderson. Readmission by baptism, November 12th, 2024, and restoration of temple blessings, November 12th, 2024. Yeah, baptism, and then it happens again. Everything happens with the restoration of blessings. The son received the letter dated November 19th in an email notifying him that his mother's long-sought restoration, including her temple sealing to her husband Paul, were back in place. In addition, the previous restriction would be removed from her records. Well, that's good. So if the restrictions removed from your records, now I guess she can hold other callings in the church. Oh, wait, she's dead. I forgot. She can hold other callings in the church in the spirit world, I suppose. So it looks like it happened 7 days before they sent the email notifying him that it had happened. Now, when I said Christian, I think took it, well, this is what I mean. Christian wanted to do it himself, he says ruefully, but I'm going to take the win. Still, he holds deeply ambivalent feelings about this. On the one hand, he says the outcome is exactly what I think she would have wanted. The original ordinances are restored as if the last 3 decades were just one big misunderstanding, Christian says. On the other hand, I feel like I was denied the chance to be part of the reconciliation process. And somehow the restoration feels like something that happened to her, and secondarily to me, just like the excommunication was something that happened to her. So he draws that connection between the two. I think that's a good point. Any comments there, Bill?
I just find it strange, the kinds of unethical, deceptive, dishonest things that the leaders of the church can do. They can lie in documented instances, and they never even get called to task by any sort of process in the church that's been laid out by revelation. And then you get the good people who are the truth tellers, and for solely telling the truth, they not only get punished, but then even if they come crawling back and begging to be re-entered into the church, those top guys who get away with everything still have a vendetta, an unhealthy vendetta that they choose to carry out until the person is long gone.
It's good to be the king.
Yeah.
For her part, Anderson always has felt, this is the last slide, and I put it here for a reason. For her part, Anderson, Lavina Fielding Anderson, always has felt a great sense of peace that I made a moral decision, an ethical decision, a decision of integrity and conscience, she wrote. I did the very best I knew how to do, the thing that I felt was the right thing to do. And that is the end of that story.
All right. Yeah, I don't have much else to add. I think the story speaks for itself. To go almost 30 years, many of those where you are actively asking the church to be reinstated and doing everything you can to show that you are remorseful for telling the truth. And for them to wait until after she's gone is absolutely absurd. It's just not the kind of thing that good people do.
The first presidency rarely misses an opportunity to show that they're not disciples of Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Well, if they were showing they're not, they hit that one out of the park.
I think I said it the way I meant it.
Yeah, you did.
All right. Well, let's go to your stories, Bill.
Yeah, 3 really quick stories, and then we'll get you folks out of here. The first one is, this was back in church news about 2 weeks ago. 2,500 people participate in the Book of Mormon experiment in Germany at the world's largest book fair. So there's the world's largest book fair. It's in Germany. Lots of different projects and books on display, different conversations occurring. It's sort of a chance for any entity or author behind a book to sort of tell their story. And the church chose to take a section of the area and present the Book of Mormon, and it challenged people to read a page. So roughly 2,500 people, vast majority of whom are not members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, read a page from the Book of Mormon at the 2024 Frankfurter Buchmesse, or Frankfurt, whatever you said, or the Frankfurt Book Fair. Yeah, well, I trust you.
Okay, I think that's right. I don't know what it means. I'm guessing it's a fair. It's a mess, whatever it is, a mess of books.
October 16th through the 20th. And people would read the book, and then the church would say, what did you feel when you read that? And people would say, I felt some peace. I felt, basically they're noting it. It's the Holy Ghost, but they're just reading a page and they're moving on to the rest of the book fair. And maybe you get a baptism out of it. Maybe you don't, but it's a great way. It's a great way to reinforce to the members that here's a bunch of strangers and they're reading the Book of Mormon and they're feeling the Holy Ghost. And that's sort of what the church used this article to claim. The Frankfurt Book Fair is the largest trade fair for books in the world, with over 230,000 attendees. Book of Mormon might be the only book there that was free. Wow. And still most people turn it down. Yeah, 230,000 attendees this year from Germany and beyond. The church sponsored a booth that invited attendees to participate in what is called the Book of Mormon experiment. This is out of the church news, as well as discover their heritage through family search, according to a release on the churchofjesuschrist.org.
When I was on my mission, we used to teach English to the Japanese in order to get them to listen to the gospel and squeak in gospel principles in the English lessons. Now they're just using genealogy.
Yeah, they don't want to do that anymore. And
by the way, I didn't know about this Frankfurt Book Fair. That's the largest book fair in the world. Mm-hmm. That's ironic, because the largest book burning in the world was also in Germany.
Yeah, I wonder if that place is selected for that reason, to sort of be the antithesis of what happened in the past. Maybe. By the way, you can still put in LDS.org and it takes you to the same place. So if nobody wants to type churchofjesuschrist.org, you can just LDS.org.
I never type that out. I just go LDS.org and it takes me there.
And they know you do that, because that's why they have one redirect right to the other. And the church's Europe newsroom, the Book of Mormon experiment, invited non-members to read one page of the Book of Mormon and mark each reference to God or Jesus Christ with the intent. So they're already, they're already directing you what to do and what kind of experience to have, and
which page to read.
Yeah,
I'm guessing it's not going to be Isaiah or the Sermon on the Mount or Pauline epistles, or
where Lehi dwelt in a tent. The intent to help participants come to their own knowledge of the truthfulness of the book. How many baptisms did we get? No one has the answer to that. So that's that story. Sort of a feel-good story for believers.
0 baptisms. You know how I know that?
Because they didn't talk about it in the article.
Boom, baby.
Yeah. That would have been mentioned for sure.
Yeah.
Number 2, I got to remember who, if it says here who wrote this one. Because the other one I think the other one's Tad Welch. One of these two is Tad Welch. One of my favorite folks over there at the church news. This is enrollment growth at Latter-day Saint universities rebuts narrative about young adults losing faith. So what the church is saying, or at least what the article is saying based on the data, is that all of the church schools attendance application to attend is up at every single one of them. So at BYU, increase of 2.4%, BYU Hawaii 2.9, BYU Idaho 2.2, BYU Pathway 22.1. But in part, that's because they just offered a new 3-year bachelor's degree.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, no. I think that's the truth. I might even have a slide on it
It
here.
says it right there. I mean, I'm reading it. That says
Yeah.
BYU Pathways President Brian Ashton said that BYU Pathways growth in 2024 was primarily driven by the new 3-year bachelor's degrees offered in conjunction with BYU Idaho and Ensign College. As if the church isn't having enough trouble having other universities respect their degrees.
Yeah.
Now we'll give you a 4-year degree in 3 years, and that'll really wow them out in New York.
Yeah. So they're showing pathway enrollment that continues to go up. They're showing all of the church schools. Those are showing an increase in attendance. Now I want to put up on the screen just to show, let me move something out of here. So it might be, at least in part, back in January of this year, the church offered a $1,000 return missionary scholarship to attend BYU Idaho. Now, one would think you either don't have enough enrollees to BYU Idaho, or you don't have enough people applying to go on a mission. And the reason you offer this is to increase one or both of those two things. But this is only a part of it. And I think it's fair to say that the church is almost certainly experiencing the growth that it's talking about. And here's what the quote was from the article down there in the bottom right. Counter to the narrative sometimes heard that young people are leaving their faith, the numbers actually show the youth and youth adults in the church educational system are flocking to their faith, said Elder Clark G. Gilbert, the church commissioner of education. But I put my brain on it for about 12 seconds, and I came up with another possibility too, which is the rigid Orthodox believers could in fact increase or become more stalwart. Meanwhile, still have a growing number of people leave the church, and such could still allow the school to experience growth, because this is such a small segment of church membership that if there is a growing number of people who are entrenching, sunken cost fallacy, or entrenching in their faith, doubling down in terms of belief, the school could experience growth, but that wouldn't necessarily mean that the number of kids is also growing in terms of faithful, active young people in the church. And so there are other ways in which, and here's the other trick. We're all guessing. And why are we all guessing? Because the church actually doesn't share the numbers.
Exactly. And the other thing is this. He's interpreting this data as flocking to the faith, but the data is an increase in applications to different church schools. I'm not sure that that's apples and apples.
Correct. And especially when the school isn't all members, there's non-members who attend as well. And also church schools tend to be a little less expensive than other schools in the nation. And even if you're out of state, and even if you're a non-member, which would also lend that in tough economic times, people might be applying to more affordable schools. And so there are other reasons why that could happen as well. But again, to the faithful, all roads point to Rome.
Exactly. By the way, I was going to put this one up again.
Yeah.
Was it this one, or was it over here? Let me see. There was a place there.
It's not that, because that's the last.
Well, I don't know.
That's the last story.
There was a place there that I thought I wanted to comment on, but I'm not seeing it again. So that's okay. It probably wasn't that great a comment anyway.
So
I'm
there's
just going to say that I don't think that BYU Idaho, the words BYU Idaho and higher education should be used in the same sentence.
Oh, that's from my screenshot, probably.
Oh, that's why I couldn't find it. It was on another screen. Yeah, where it says BYU Idaho offers a one-time $1,000 return missionary scholarship to encourage recently returned missionaries to pursue higher education at BYU Idaho. That is an oxymoron.
Yeah. And that just started back in January of this year. So that would at least explain some of the growth for applicants. And so that's the second story. And then just wrapping up, this I thought was the most interesting story.
So, Bill, if you lose your faith and leave the church while you're at BYU Idaho, do you have to pay back the $1,000?
You have to start your education all over again
And pay back the $1,000, I'll bet.
And maybe pay back the $1,000. You wonder if there is an agreement. Yeah. If you don't keep the honor code, do you get to keep the scholarship? And that would be another manipulative way to get people to toe the line, wouldn't it?
If the church wasn't so manipulative in its tactics, they wouldn't need so many lawyers.
And they have a hell of a lot of them. We only have one.
Well, two, counting Colby.
No, counting Colby.
You got me on this show, only one. Yes.
Okay. All right. So
who's this guy with the tie?
Yeah. So this, I'll get to a picture of him here in just a moment, but his name is Jed Woodworth. And so trustworthy histories come from those who love their subject, say scholars behind the saints. The saints is the new, more honest, more accurate, dumbed down, because they said they wrote it sort of at like a 6th or 7th grade reading level.
Now 25% more accurate.
Yeah, you can get a degree and be a historian in the church in just 3 years through the BYU Pathways program. So this article but this is the one by Jacob Hess, by the way, another one of my favorites over at the Church News and Deseret News. So Jed Woodworth says there's a problem with saying that if you're deeply invested in something, that somehow you have less ability to tell the truth.
Do I get to respond to that?
You can, yeah, please. What would you like to say about that particular sentence?
Jed Woodworth is absolutely wrong. Okay. Now, being deeply invested in something may not mean that you've lost your ability to tell the truth. Okay. But it sure goes a long way that way. This is why when one spouse starts stepping out on another spouse, and I've been there, done that, the other spouse is the last to know. Okay. The reason I was the last to know is because I was deeply invested in something, i.e. the marriage. Everybody else in the ward knew what was going on. This is over 30 years ago. Everybody else knew what was going on. You know why they knew what was going on? Because they weren't deeply invested in it. They could see what was happening. I was the one who couldn't see what was going on. So yes, I definitely had less of an ability to tell, to discern the truth because of that relationship.
Yeah, and one only has to look at other entities in the world that when people are invested in a certain narrative, when people are invested in certain beliefs and they are inside a system, we can give hundreds of examples of things being manipulated, truths withheld, facts stated not quite objectively, in order to help guide folks into seeing things a certain way. And so I think you're 100% right, RFM. And the article continued with, these are all quotes from Jed. He says, if you were to try and convince me of the merits of gardening and I didn't believe in it, would you want to go to someone who dislikes gardening or detests gardening or hasn't put time into gardening? Now, this is a straw man, because you and I love Mormon history. We've spent decades reading things that most people have never even considered about the church. Just because I don't believe the church is true doesn't give Jed the right to paint me as someone who dislikes Mormonism in terms of its history and reading it and studying it and knowing about it. And so it's a straw man that he's building there.
I would say what is true is that regardless of what it is that you are deeply invested in, okay, you have to be most deeply invested. The thing that has to matter most to you is the truth. It doesn't make any difference if it's gardening or if it's the church, if it's the restored gospel that you're studying. You can be deeply invested, but you must be more invested in telling the truth. Otherwise, you will have your point of view skewed, you will hide things, and you will slant the rest in order to give a faithful rendering. Yeah,
and we'll see a few examples of that in a moment to show the counterpoint. He says, Or would you want to go to someone who reads gardening books on their vacations? Someone who's so into gardening and loves it that they want every little detail to be told well as they show you the beauties of gardening. It seems like he's saying two different things there, but it sort of is meshed together. And I just copied and pasted this directly from the Deseret News. But he also says, and this one was the one that got me, too often our members think that if they go to someone who dislikes the church, that somehow these people are more invested in the truth than the people who love the church and want to see it prospering. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun to sort of give a few examples that what he said is actually demonstrably not true?
I want to get to those examples too, and I know, and they're great. I just want to say this, okay, about that. All right. Here's how I approach it, right? Is that what I want to do is I want to see where the truth is on both sides of an issue so I can make up my own mind. The truth I'm interested in is little t truth. It's the truth that you find out by examining the evidence and trying to come to reasonable and hopefully logical conclusions based upon that evidence. That's the truth I'm after. The truth that Jed Woodworth is talking about is truth with a capital T and a little TM next to the side because it's been trademarked by the LDS Church. And what that truth means is nothing from column A and everything from column B. And column B is reorganized in such a way as to make you think not only is there no column A, but column B smells like a rose.
Sorry, I'm looking something up really quick.
Did I make you think of something?
Yeah, but I was hoping I'd have it really quickly. I was going to say something about, hello, Current Bush. I am the gardener here, but because he's making all these gardener references that are
UB Brown.
Ridiculous. Yes.
I've heard that. Did you have that audio tape, the cassette tape with that on it, that talk by Hubie Brown?
No, I had one from Spencer W. Kimball that probably wouldn't be doctrine anymore either.
I think, was that part of the talk? Because I know he was famous for that talk as well as, I think, Profile of a Prophet. I think that was a second talk, and maybe on the flip side of the same cassette tape.
Yeah, just God is the Gardener. Hubie Brown, May 31st, 1968.
Where he tells a story about having been in the Canadian Army in a high office. And then he goes into his commander, and his commander, he thinks he's going to get the promotion, and he doesn't. And he sneaks a look at the file, and it says, "This guy's a Mormon. That's why we're not giving it to him." And he was really upset about that. But then he realized that it was all for his own good, because God is the gardener, and God will prune him back and us as much as we need.
He pruned Lavina Anderson, didn't he?
He pruned the hell out of her.
Yeah. So I wanted to show some examples. So what Jed is saying is that the people who love the church and want to see it prosper are better sources for getting the full story and getting the truth. And
how could you possibly? He says, if you want to see it prospering, people who want to see the church prosper are a better source for truth when they've already admitted they have a bias, an agenda, a reason for not being able to be trusted at face value. This is crazy stuff. Are you sure he actually said these words?
This is what the article claims he said. And these are the folks who are connected to the book Saints. And what he said in there, at least what the article said, I think he said it too, but I think the article said it generally. Everything in Saints is meticulously accurate. And I just want to note, one can be accurate and still obfuscate and manipulate. It's called twisting the facts. And that kind of stuff happens all the time. And so I wanted to show multiple examples of the people who love the church and are more invested than any of us in it prospering.
Yes.
And to see how things come out. So here's one. President Brigham Young, second prophet of the church, said the Lord told Cain that he should not receive the blessings of the priesthood nor his seed until the last of the posterity of Abel had received the priesthood, until the redemption of the earth. And then the church today takes this prophecy that's actually a false prophecy, because we didn't wait. We went in 1978 and went ahead and removed the priesthood and temple ban from people of color. And then we said that Brigham Young had prophesied of this day all along, when in reality, Brigham Young had prophesied that it wouldn't happen until during or after the millennium, which makes his prophecy a false prophecy. So here are the people who love the faith and want to see it prosper, twisting the facts and leaving ellipses in that mean everything.
And notice, like, I think the point you're making is that in the recent essay, what they said is true. Because President Young did say at some future day, Black church members would have all the privileges and more enjoyed by other members. Yes, he said that. So what they said is true, but what they left out is the fact that he said it would happen only after all the white people had had their chance to have the priesthood, all the posterity of Abel, as he puts it. So this is how you tell the truth and lie your ass off. And the church is a master of it.
Yep.
It's called equivocation.
Yep. We covered this one recently. Do Latter-day Saints believe they will get their own planet? No, this idea is not taught in Latter-day Saint scripture, nor is it a doctrine. Yet, in the still current Gospel Fundamentals Manual, which is used in developing areas of the church where there are branches and districts, this is used in place of, I'm trying to remember what it's used in place of.
Is it the investigator class?
No, it's used in place of
new members.
No, it's like either like the scriptures or the gospel doctrine, places where the church hasn't extended things in other languages. This is the thing they would use. In a current manual, they will even be able to have spirit children and make new worlds for them to live on. Again, these are the people who love the church and want to see it prosper, and they are manipulating questions and answers so as to present one idea to the general public, so they don't think we're too weird, and then maintain some sort of doctrinal integrity out in the church. And those two things contradict each other, at least on some level. I can't find somebody who can really explain how these things mesh well.
Oh, sure, I can tell you. First off, noticing the church newsroom is for the Goyim. It's for all the non-Mormons. And Sunday school manual, that's for the Mormons. All right. So one side is not supposed to know what the other side is learning or teaching or what's written there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really easy. So what they say is, in the church newsroom, will Mormons get their own planet? Okay. Now, in your mind, you have to augment this by saying God is taking a planet and he's creating it, and then he's gift wrapping it, and then he's putting it under the Christmas tree. And on Christmas morning, you run in from the celestial bedroom upstairs, and there's your planet under the tree, and you got a new planet for Christmas. No, that's not the truth. The truth is that once we're exalted, we'll be able to make planets ourselves. See, so that's why they do that in this way, I think, and still can look themselves in the mirror, though they have to do it a little squint eyes and maybe turn the lights down a lot.
When a non-Mormon is asking someone in the LDS church, do Mormons believe they get their own planet? They're looking for a response that conveys what the manual is saying. And by you answering sort of a different question, you're still being deceptive.
They're being totally deceptive. To the answer to the question, do Latter-day Saints believe they will get their own planet? If they were not being deceptive, they would take this and just copy and paste it from the Sunday school manual into the church newsroom article.
Yeah, but they don't want to do that. So there's another instance. Now, here's one. Bruce R. McConkie gives his original address on the 7 deadly heresies. You can still go to the BYU speeches site, I believe, BYU devotional, June 1st, 1980. If you play the audio, you'll hear one thing, but the church has changed the transcribed version to say something completely different. This happens quite a bit. And it happens sometimes in ways that we go like, thank goodness they changed it and made it less offensive to people in the LGBT community, for instance. I'm thinking of President Packer in one of his talks given about 10 years before he passed.
Why would a loving Heavenly Father do that?
Right. But there are other instances like the Ronald Pullman talk where it was intentionally meant to deceive the faithful into thinking they had misremembered the talk that was given. Because you don't include a cough track unless you're trying to fool people. Yeah. So there's another instance of people who love the church and want to see it prosper.
Oh, did you get to the part in there? Did you actually get to the part to read from the slide with Bruce?
I can. I wasn't really wanting, because there's a couple places I think that are different, but this is one of them. But there is no way to harmonize the false religions of the Dark Ages with the truths of science as they have now been discovered, and there is no way to harmonize the revealed religion which has come to us with the theoretical postulates of Darwinism and the diverse speculations descending therefrom.
So very adamant that evolution is not true.
Right. And then in the transcribed version, is there any way to harmonize the false religions of the Dark Ages with the truths of science as they have now been discovered? Is there any way to harmonize the revealed religion that has come to us with the theoretical postulates of Darwinism and the diverse speculations descending therefrom? Bruce R. McConkie wasn't asking a question. He never asked questions. Bruce R. McConkie told you what it is that we believe. So here is the church not only changing the question, changing a statement into a question.
Yes.
Yeah. Then you have editing doctrine, the King Follett sermon. You have that edited from the original 15 August 1844. And again, I don't necessarily want to read these. Folks can pause the video and look up there. But on May 1971 in the Ensign, the church just went ahead and made Joseph Smith say something a little different. No big deal. It changes the meaning of what's going on, but they had no problem doing that. And then one of my favorites, Lorenzo Snow, when he went to St. George, they were having a drought. It was a prime moment for a great miracle.
I saw that movie.
Yeah, it was a great little 17-minute film. Whoever played Lorenzo Snow, you did awesome. You deserve a
film strip. We showed a film strip of that in Japan.
Yeah. Lorenzo Snow commanded the people that they should pay tithing, but he said, I plead with you in the name of the Lord, and I pray that every man, woman, and child who has means. By the way, same thing with the SEC. Why, Radio Free Mormon, might the church want to leave out the phrase who has means, just like they went out of their way to create 13 dummy companies?
Yes.
Because they thought if they told the members what Lorenzo Snow actually said, that people might not pay their tithing.
That's such a damning omission.
Yeah.
By the way, Bill, do you know what Lorenzo Snow said after he was preaching in the tabernacle in St. George and then looked up and the light came down and he received the revelation? You know what he said? He said, Hakirito wakarimashita.
Which means in English,
I understand exactly.
Okay. What's that from, by the way?
That would be the Japanese film strip version of Windows of Heaven.
Oh, I got you. All right. Perfect. All right. I'll just end here saying we can show beyond a shadow of a doubt, not just in Mormonism, but in all entities across the world, that when people have deep biases and want to see something be portrayed in the best light, they are more likely than others to manipulate and obfuscate and deceive in how they present that message so as to get what it is they're trying to get, which is to see the thing prosper and be portrayed well in the general public.
They will make excuses all day long for things that nobody else who is not biased would make excuses for. And actually, I think I finally came up with one sentence that synopsizes why it was that I finally became disaffected from the Mormon church. And that is this, that I finally became tired of making excuses for the inexcusable.
Amen. So those are my three stories. And, but you've got, I think, an update for us.
Oh, yeah. We don't have a slide for it either, though, do we?
We don't have a slide, but I just wondered if maybe even if you wanted to read Rebecca's text.
I don't even want to read that. First off, I don't have the phone here. It's way back there, so it's not a distraction to me. If you've got it, that's great. I didn't think it was that helpful because we needed the comparison. The bottom line is what's just happened, and the ink is still wet on this document, is that the church and the Fairview City Council, remember the big dust up they were having about the temple there? And it was going to be a lawsuit. Fairview had denied the church's request to have a temple because the temple was way, way bigger than the zoning allowed for in a residential area. And so the church has threatened to sue. The city has threatened to not care and go ahead and be sued and fight them on this. And now all that's by the wayside because miraculously, the city of Fairview and the church have come to an agreement on the temple. And I think that, see, there's a lot of numbers of height and the spire and everything in this little news release that you got from Rebecca. But it doesn't mean anything to me because I can't compare them with the other with how it was proposed in the first place. You know what I mean? I think that essentially what has happened is that they met halfway, that the church did not have to go down to what the zoning is, and the city didn't have to allow them to have it as big as they originally wanted. I think that's the bottom line. They mediated. They came to a compromise.
Yeah. So what I've got is a compromise has been reached on the McKinney LDS Temple situation. The LDS Church has put forward a new design that is 30,000 square feet, and before it was like 47,000 or something like that.
If Rebecca were here, she'd have a slide about it.
Yeah, 35 to 45 foot walls and 120 foot ish tall spire, with the last 10 feet or so being just a pole. The temple will be similar to the Austin, Texas temple. Congratulations to Fairview, Texas, and thank you so much, LDS Church, for doing the right thing. This is a win for everyone. That's the message. It doesn't feel like a win-win. First off, it's a win-win in terms of Fairview saving money for sure, but there are other people involved than just these two actors. There are other cities now and other cities in the future who will have temples coming into their town, and it really does. I don't think the church wanted to take this to its logical end either. They don't want somebody at the highest levels of law at a Supreme Court making a decision that not anything goes in terms of religious freedom. That would have huge impact in lots of ways. And so I think it was just as much in the church's interest to get something and move on rather than keep fighting this all the way to its end, trying to get exactly what you asked for.
I found the slide in an old show while you were talking. The McKinney, Texas Temple, which is the Fairview Temple, 43,000 square feet was the original. So how much is it now?
It is 30,000, so 13,000 less.
It was 173 foot tall spire originally. What is it now?
120-ish, with the last 10 feet just being a pole.
Okay, which kind of looks like maybe that's what it was here as well.
Yep.
All right, so now we have an idea of the amount of compromise. It's still like I said, it's still beyond the zoning, but they will allow that variance to the church by mediation. And you're hearing it here, maybe first, I don't know, but I think it just happened. I know it had just happened today, and maybe just this afternoon.
Yeah. So there's that.
Oh, sorry. All right. So that's it for the show then. Thank you so much, Bill, for covering those stories. I hope I didn't spend too much time on Lavina Fielding Anderson's story. I felt it was a story that merited that much time. And so I've got no regrets about spending that time. I think she had an amazing life, and it was worthwhile to review some of the elements of that here. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We hope that you have a wonderful Thanksgiving this Thursday. Please join us nevertheless on Wednesday evening. Maybe you'll be cooking Thanksgiving meal on Wednesday evening. You can join us for Mormonism Live at 6:20 p.m. Mountain Time. Bill, what are we going to be talking about there?
So one of the folks from Saints Unscripted, he's got his own YouTube channel. I don't have his name handy, but we'll have it for you on Wednesday. He interviews LDS historian Ben Spackman.
It's on Keystone, the Keystone podcast.
Yeah. And the title of the thing, I've got it here somewhere. Let me take a look. It is LDS historian set, and basically it's his quote, "Be ready, the church is changing." And I listened to a section of this, and I was blown away by the admittances of Ben Spackman. And RFM, you made a great connection, which we'll share on Wednesday. But I think you don't want to miss this. I think this is one of these moments that you and I would have never seen coming 15, 20 years ago, where one of the church's apologists, this guy's on the church's team, no ifs, ands, or buts.
Yes, Ben Spackman.
And he is articulating an argument that I would have never foreseen an apologist caving into saying. Because essentially, along with everything else in the episode we did titled Indiscernible from a Fraud, Ben Spackman makes prophets indiscernible from a fraud. And so you'll want to join us Wednesday night at 6:20 p.m. Mountain Time on the Mormon Discussion YouTube channel for Mormonism Live that night.
That has 177,000 views.
Yes.
People are watching this, and a lot of people are not happy in the comment section. A lot of the members of the church are not happy about this being said because they think, and I think rightfully so, that the obvious conclusion of what Ben Spackman is advocating for is that historians and scholars are above the prophets.
Yeah.
Now, he'll say that's not the case, but then when you listen to him talk, you go, well, it sure sounds like that's what you're saying, Ben.
Yeah. So
we'll go over that on Wednesday. Also on Friday, we're going to be doing Mormonism After Dark, right, my friend?
Yep, 8 p.m. Mountain Time, Mormonism After Dark. It's a much more laid back, a little more adult oriented, a little more joking around, and I think at times really great conversation, great jokes, and I think it's just a great time. The folks that are in the comments seem to be really enjoying these episodes, and we'd love it if you checked it out.
Yeah, at times, like from beginning to end, it's got great jokes, great conversation. It's amazing.
Yes. By the way, what I meant was at times we're joking, at times we're telling stories. Each of those sort of has a place in the show. I think the show is more interesting in more ways than the traditional stuff that we do.
Well, we certainly get opportunities to talk about things that other formats would not give us the opportunity to talk about. It would never come into our mind to talk about it. So hopefully everybody can come and join us. It's viewer driven, and you can share your dysfunctional Thanksgiving stories with us.
We'd love that. That'll be fun because we'll be one day later. We'd love to know if you're the post-Mormon and you sat down in the mostly Mormon family and had Thanksgiving. We'd love to know how those conversations went.
And if you got a copy of the Light on Truth letter by Austin Fife, because believe it or not, Colby Reddish and I, we did chapter 1. It aired last Saturday to rave reviews. We asked the people, hey, do you like this? Do you want us to go on with this? And everybody who responded to that issue, and there were a lot of them, said, yes, please. So sometime in the midst of all of this stuff that's going on this week, Colby and I are going to get together. We're going to record an episode about chapter 2, and it's about the Book of Mormon and the coming forth of the Book of Mormon and all the incredible boneheaded errors that Austin Fife makes in his Light on Truth letter. That's why we call it the Light on Truth letter, because it's kind of light on the truth. So we'll go over those and we'll show them to the audience, and hopefully Austin Fife, who we know is watching this, will make some very much needed corrections to his document. So I think that's about everything. Oh my gosh, that's a big week. All right. Thanks everybody for watching. If you can't join us for anything else, please meet us here again next week at the Mormon Newscast at 6:00 p.m. Mountain Time. And hopefully, God willing, Rebecca Biblioteca will be here to join us, and she'll be feeling up to joining us again at that time. So thanks for watching. Happy Thanksgiving. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Tommy here. That's a wrap for this week's edition of the Mormon Newscast. We appreciate you tuning in and sharing this time with us. Keep the conversation going and stay informed on all things Mormonism. Until next week, wishing you peace and joy. See you next Monday at 6 p.m. on the Mormon Newscast. Close quote.